Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Same Old Arsenal podcast. Hope you're doing very, very well on this Monday evening. And it feels like a long time since I've been here in the hot seat. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into it. It feels like a hell of a long time since the season has come to an end. But Chris, before the Euro starts, looking forward to talking to some Arsenal with you. And in this edition of the podcast, we're going to be taking a look at the current Arsenal squad just before the transfer window starts to hot up, just before we see some new names come in. And we're going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into some of the fringe players. Should we keep them? Should they be sold? Or do they need a loan? So just to clarify, before we do start this, we're not going to be going through every single player in the Arsenal squad because me and Chris were saying before we went on, Declan Rice, Saliba, Gabriel, even Kai Havertz. We want to keep all of these guys. And we're very fortunate to be in the position now where we've got a team where we know the guys that we want to keep. No longer are we having to have debates over the likes of Mustafi, Socrates, Lacazette. We've got our 11 pretty much. And even we've got 3, 4, 5 players beyond that we know we want to keep. So we're just going to be taking a look at the guys that we think have their futures a little bit up in the air at Arsenal in a minute. But to help me do that, I've mentioned his name a few times already. It is the wonderful Chris Howard that's joining me tonight. How are you, my friend?
I'm all right, mate. Should we give a shout out to our lovely sponsor, Ruth Beckart? I've noticed you've put a nice little Ruth Beckart logo on the graphic. So good work there, Mr. Cook.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to say it. Amanda pesters me every single time that I don't do it. So Ruth, apologies. I do have the best intentions. We try and plug you as much as we possibly can do, but it's Amanda that's in my ear getting me to put your name on the thumbnails. But they are thoroughly deserved to be on there. And you're quite right, Chris. Before we start, you should absolutely go and check out Ruth Beckart. She's our fabulous sponsor. Her work is absolutely amazing. And we've got Father's Day coming up. And just look at some of these wonderful pieces of artwork you could get for your beloved father. So go out there, check out Ruth Beckart on Etsy, get some fabulous pieces of Arsenal memorabilia, and, make your Gooner dad very, very happy on Father's Day. That's the thumbnail. Ignore that. That shouldn't have gone up there. Anyway, moving on. Chris, I'm going to start with the obvious one that I think is the name on everybody's lips. Aaron Ramsdale obviously has had a very tough season at Arsenal. David Raya came in, and I think it's pretty much an open secret that David Raya is going to be made permanent in the next couple of weeks, or the next month or so. Ramsdale's future, I don't think, is quite as cut and dry as he should just be sold imminently, because he's on a long-term contract. And if there was interest for him, I would say, okay, let's cash in. Let's try and get, a decent fee for him. But we know that Newcastle now are looking at James Trafford because they've been put off by the fee that we're apparently looking for Aaron Ramsdale. So I'm a little bit stumped with this one. What would you do in the case of a certain Aaron Ramsdale?
Well, I love him, much like you, much like Amanda, much like many of the people we get in the chat. I love the guy, and I think he's a very good goalkeeper. I don't think the delta between David Raya and Aaron Ramsdale is that massive. If JJ was listening right now, he'd be throwing his device against the wall, because I know that he loves Raya. I think he loves Ramsdale, but I think his love for Raya is paramount. Aaron Ramsdale made 6 appearances in the league last season, 2 of them obviously against Brentford. If you imagine that if he was to stick around this season coming, it would probably be 4 appearances at best. And I think 3 of those appearances came within the first week. So he's just not going to get game time. So it really hurts me to say this, but I think you have to sell him. You can't have a guy that's that good. And if we can get, I think it all depends on the market as well. Because if he's that good, you can't just keep him on the bench. Like, he's playing for his England career. I think he's a better goalkeeper than Jordan Pickford. I think he should be playing as England's number 1. And so I think you have to say, we probably have to sell him and cash in. But it hurts me to say that.
What would be an acceptable fee for you for Ramsdale?
So I wrote about this today in my blog. A little cheeky plug there for suburbangooners.com. But I said that I think we got him for 24 million plus something like 6 or 7 million of add-ons, which works out to about 30 million quid. I don't know if those 30 million have been activated over the last 2 and a bit years that he's been at the club. I don't think you can get anything less than what we paid for him, because he's established himself as a number one at Arsenal and a good goalkeeper. He's still in the England squad. We've got him tied down to a long-term contract. For me, we should be looking for around about at least 30 million quid. The rumours are that Arsenal were looking at 50 million. Don't think you're going to get that. But I think if you go north of 30 million quid, we'd probably have to say, fine, wish you all the best, Aaron, as long as it's not at one of our rivals, which it may inevitably be. And that's that.
Yeah, and the longer he stays on the bench, the more that fee is going to decrease. So I think if we're able to get 30 million plus, then we absolutely have to cash in. It's just a case of whether we get that 30 million. Because to be honest, Chris, I'm not actually sure I see a lot of clubs in the league that are in desperate need of a keeper. I mean, Newcastle were the ones that were staring out at me as being the obvious candidate. As I say, they've turned their attentions to James Trafford. Chelsea look like an option as well, but we understand the new coach is quite interested in working with Sanchez there. So at the moment, I'm not too sure I see an obvious club that Ramsdale can go to, but we are talking about this very early on in the window. So I'm sure clubs will come out of the woodwork, express some interest in him. But I think the important thing is we have to sell well, because we don't want to be seen to be selling a guy that is such a prize asset on the cheap, because that's what we've done very, very badly in the past. But I also think it's interesting, the idea of potentially sending him out on loan. If there is a club that would be interested in loaning him, I know you're shaking your head there, and I totally understand why, but if there was a club that took him on loan, he played 38 out of 38 games, I mean, that could do wonders for us in terms of generating a better fee. I mean, he's still got a very long-term contract, but I totally get what you're saying. We need cash in the bank now. He's an asset we can definitely sell for 30 million. I'd be inclined to do it. But we could do a whole podcast on Aaron Ramsdale, because that's definitely a debate for another day. And
of course, can I chuck in a couple of clubs, just a little bit of speculative ones? Man United.
Okay, that's a rogue shout.
West Ham, Crystal Palace. I think those teams, they're probably, I'm looking at the table, Chelsea, Newcastle, United, Palace, West Ham, all of those teams. And Ramsdale is an upgrade on what they've got at the moment. Just gonna leave it there and let you move us on.
Interesting, very interesting shouts. Another one that I've included in my list, which I think a lot of people might raise their eyebrow at, is Jakub Kiwior. Obviously, he came in, did a fantastic job in that brilliant winning run we had earlier on this year when we were smashing teams 4, 5, 6-0 on a regular basis. Came in at left back, was really solid, was kind of in and out of the team since then. I don't think that home leg against Bayern Munich did him any favours, going up against what felt like the best right winger in world football in Leroy Sané at the time. Really horrible game from him that night. Not that he was horrendous, but I mean, it was a very tough game to play in for a guy out of position. But like I say, since that game, we've not seen a lot of him. He seems to have established himself as a first choice defender in the Poland national team. I don't think he's going to get huge amounts of game time at Arsenal next season, particularly with Timber coming back. I'm not sure how much we'll see him at left back. I think if anything, he would be the deputy to Gabriel at left centre back. And if Gabriel's fully fit all season, I mean, when does he play? So if there was to be an offer come in for Jakub Kiwior, and we've heard that AC Milan are potentially interested. I mean, we signed him for, what was it, 15 odd million quid? I think we could.
20 million quid, it says, from Spezia.
That's quite a lot of money, isn't it? Like for Kiwior. I think, given how he's done at Arsenal, you've got to be looking at profit on someone like him. So if an offer was to come in, say around the £25 million mark, Chris, would you be looking at moving Kiwior on?
Yeah, I mean, his current market value on transfer market is 30 million euros, which I think is 26 million quid. I just wrote down left back options. This is where it gets difficult, because at the moment, and it depends on if we're taking our choices here as we're going through it, because I'm sure you're going to talk about the likes of Zinchenko. Are you going to talk about Zinchenko? Yeah, okay. At left back at the moment, we've got Tomiyasu, Timber, and Zinchenko who can play left back. This is kind of an if-then-what type thing. But if you are saying you're moving on Zinchenko or you're loaning out Zinchenko, you've only got two first choice left backs. And Tomiyasu only made 22 appearances last season, and he was injured a fair bit. And that's happened to him every season he's been at the club. Centre back, we've got Gabriel and Tomiyasu. But again, same question. So That's a
And
really
Ben
hard.
White,
This is a really hard
if
one.
we're still including Ben White, you've got him as an option there.
Ben White, yeah. He could. I mean, I don't know how much he plays left sided, but I guess they'd move Saliba there, wouldn't they, to that left hand side? I would be saying if AC, which I don't think will happen, if AC Milan came in and said £30 million, I don't think that after having the guy for 18 months and he's not established himself, to make a £10 million profit, that's probably the sort of thing you've got to say, yeah, all right then. But unless AC Milan do that, I'd be saying no. And I'm a child of the 90s and 2000s Championship Manager generation, and I stockpile players when I play that game. And I would be keeping him because the off chances, just because of Tomiyasu. So I would keep him. I wouldn't loan him or sell him. But that caveat changes depending on what you do with Zinchenko, and also whether Tomiyasu can stay fit.
Yeah, and I think there's a perfect comment here from Dunonymous that Jakob is insurance, which is a really good way of putting it, because if you go back to the season before the one just gone, when we lost Saliba and Rob Holding came in, that was a definite downgrade. Whereas obviously if we lost Gabriel and Kivior came in, that, in the nicest way of putting it, is a bit of a downgrade. But I think you'd have a lot more confidence in Kivior's ability than, say, we did with Rob Holding coming in for Saliba. So I think, given he's only 18 months into his Arsenal career, I would definitely be looking to keep Jakob Kivior. And let's not forget, when he did come in and he played a right-sided centre-half where things were going so badly with Rob Holding, he did really well. And then he came in, did really well at left-back last season. So he's not really played a lot of his Arsenal career in his best position as the left-sided centre-half. So I still think there's more to come from Kivior. Still very young, still a player with a lot of potential. And like that comment says, he's definitely a good insurance policy. And we can't risk an injury happening to Gabriel and not having someone in backup. So hopefully he gets some minutes. Hopefully we take the cup competitions a little bit more seriously this season. We go further in the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. And hopefully Kivior gets a lot more minutes. And
Can I just jump on one thing there? Sorry, mate. I keep interrupting you. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we do have a slight lag. So I occasionally, sometimes it's just me being rude and interrupting James. I do that occasionally, but sometimes there's a bit of a lag and I think he's stopping, but he's actually moving on. On the Kivior thing, there's two things about Kivior that I like. I think his passing range and distribution is good. And I think his pace, if you compare it, you just talked about Holding as well. If we talk about the bad old days, the problem with Rob Holding was that his passing distribution was pretty pants and his pace was essentially negligible. It was non-existent. And so Kivior has those two attributes, and he's the right side of it in terms of the age curve. So for me, yeah, it's a downgrade, as you said, but again, don't want to use that word, but that delta between Gabriel and Kivior versus Gabriel and Holding.
That is a brilliant way of putting it. And that leads me on to another comment from the chat from Barry Byrne. Still have KT on our books and will be a difficult sale. Only Celtic likely, and they know that he could go for just 8 million. He's another one, isn't he, Chris? He's gone on loan to Real Sociedad. He's played well when he's been in the team, but that's the problem. It's when he's in the team. He's only made, I think, 20-something appearances for them. So he's definitely not been a consistent starter for them. Good few appearances off the bench as well. So Kieran Tierney, for me, as much as I would love for him to stay at Arsenal, I absolutely loved him when he first came to the club. He was my ideal signing. Love everything about him, his way of playing, his ability, his pace. He's just such a good traditional fullback. And you can't help but feel that the way we were playing towards the end of last season, where we had Tomiyasu playing at left back, you can't help but think, surely Tierney could do that job as well. But it's always going to come down to the injury problems. And although I think there would be a lot of interest in Kieran Tierney this summer, if he can't get over these injury problems, which history will tell you he can't, you're never really going to get a justifiable transfer fee for the player's ability. So for me, Chris, it pains me to say he is an obvious sell, but the question is, how much are you going to get for Kieran Tierney?
Yeah. Transfermarkt has his contract. Oh, that's for Sociedad. I think he has a year or two left. So has he got 2 years left this summer?
I believe so. Yeah.
I think you have to sell him. Like, we tried the loan. He didn't, the season before, he didn't play very much. Transfermarkt has him down as 12 million euros. So what's that, about 10 million pounds? I don't think we'd get 10 million pounds, because if you're, we as Arsenal fans know that he's an injury prone player, but football clubs will have data, they'll have information on him and his injury record and the amount of, he picked up 2 or 3 injuries for Sociedad. I think it really is painful to say because he's such a great guy to be around, and he's not even kicked up that much of a fuss when he's talking about Arsenal. He's just saying, look, I'll go back to Arsenal and but I need to be playing football. So I've got to be honest, I'd love us to find a way to integrate him, but the system doesn't work for him anymore. He's a kick and run line fullback, and we just don't play that anymore. We played a little bit differently. We weren't inverting as much towards the end of the season when Tomiyasu was coming in at left back. But to me, I think you've just got to try and make up as much money as you possibly can. We paid 20, according to I think it was about 25 million quid we paid for him. We're not going to get anywhere near that. You take 7, 8, 9 million and then just say, thank you very much, have a good career. And that sounds like the sort of money that Celtic might go for. But even Celtic will be saying his injury record is such that can we afford to be spending 8 million quid on a guy that might only play half a season?
Yeah, I think the big stumbling block for a club like Celtic will be the wages. The transfer fee might not be so much of an issue with them, but I think he's on about 100 grand a week, and obviously to a club like Celtic, that's massive wages. But yeah. I think we can all agree it's such a shame what's happened to Kieran Tierney, because when he first came in, he was such a good player. And to be fair, I can't really think of a particularly bad game he's had for Arsenal. I mean, he's very consistent, crossing is fabulous, but to see his transfer fee just plummet for a guy that obviously has such good ability is a real shame. But whatever happens, I think we could all agree in saying we wish him the best in his future career, because, fabulous player, cracking personality as well. So all the best to Katie, whatever happens with him. But from one injury-prone player to the next, Takahiro Tomiyasu, Chris. Again, another one that I think a lot of people might be saying, oh, why are you putting him into the conversation? He had such a good season last year. And I think whenever he did play, very good. Can't think of a bad game Tomiyasu had last season. Some of the games that he played at right back, I thought it was fantastic. That game at home in the Champions League where we won 6-0 against Lens, I thought it was brilliant. He's a guy that has so much to offer across the entire back line. But again, not made enough appearances last season and not being fit enough when we've really needed him. So if a significant offer was to come in for Tomiyasu, Chris, would you be looking to make a move?
What would you say is a significant offer?
Well, we didn't pay a great deal for Tomiyasu, did we? I think it was around the 15-ish million quid mark.
16 million quid.
Yeah, so I think if something came in around 25 million plus, would your head be turned?
I think you'd have to. I mean, let me just read out his injury rap sheet from 2019-20. So he was at Bologna in 2019-20. That's when he signed for them. He missed 10 games. He had 2 injuries. He missed 76 games and 10 games. That was in 2019-2020. So he was like 20, 21 at this stage. The following season, he missed 12 games, 54 days. And he had 3 injuries. And then 21-22, which is when we signed him, the summer of 2021, he had a calf injury, which kept him out from February to April. And then, so actually, he only missed one in his first season for us, but that was 11 football matches. And then season before last was the worst one, because he had he had knee surgery and he was out for 107 days, and he had 16 matches that he missed. And then last season he had 2 separate periods where he missed 13 matches. So he's basically missing. On that numbers alone, he misses double figures of games every season. And you're talking about, normally, by the looks of it, on average, it's about 2 months a season that he misses. Sometimes the best ability is availability, cliche alert, klaxon, and all of that jazz. If you're going to get more money than you paid for someone like that you can then reinvest, I think a lot depends on Jurrien Timber, though, because that was a big injury that he got, and we don't know if he's suddenly going to be a bit injury prone. So if you could gaze into a crystal ball and you know that Jurrien Timber is robust and is going to stay fit the whole season, you'd probably say, if you can get good money for him, then sell him. But otherwise, I'd be happy to keep him around. I think that's why Arsenal did the contract as well, didn't they? Because they just bolted an extra year onto his 1-year deal. So I can kind of get why Arsenal have done it. Let's see how you get on next year. And then next year, he'll have 2 years left on his deal. And if he's had another season where he's missed 10, 12, 13 games, they'll probably cash in then.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a great point regarding Timber, because if you can guarantee that he's going to stay fit, then I think it enables you to cash in on either one of Tomiyasu or Kivior. The problem is, I really love Tomiyasu. I think he's a fantastic footballer, and he can play in every single one of those positions across the back line. And whenever he does play, he just looks so good. But like you say, the best availability is the best ability is availability. And going on that comment that you've just highlighted there with regards to extending his contract, I think it's a bit of both in answer to your question, Abe. And I think it was to protect his value and also to prove his fitness. I definitely don't think Arsenal are giving up on Tomiyasu. I just think they want him to prove that he's fit. And if he has another season where he's going to be injury hit, then I would be looking to cash in on him. Unfortunately, it pains me to say. But I would hope that with the options we've now got across the entire back four now, we can rotate a bit more. And it does mean that not only can we take the burden off the likes of Saliba and Gabriel, but it means that Tomiyasu, Kivior, all of these guys, they're not having to play extended periods of time in their wrong positions. So I think, hopefully everyone stays fit and we're able to rotate effectively across the back line.
His transfer market has his value at 35 million euros, which is about 32 million quid. If you're getting that sort of money, what would that tempt you? 32 million quid?
I think it would, to be honest. Yeah, for a guy that's he's never made 30 appearances for us across all competitions. For 30 million quid, if an offer like that came in, and if it was from abroad as well, I would be very inclined to cash in on him. And then, keep Kivior, hope Timber stays fit. And I think we're covered across the back line, to be honest. I mean, he's a very, very useful player to have, but we've been without him for so many extended periods. I think we're quite used to not having Tomiyasu in the squad, with all due respect. So I think for that kind of money, if you can reinvest that in a striker, a midfielder, a first teamer in one of those positions, yeah, I think you go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And then this, I'm not going to say it's the last of the injury-prone players, but it's a guy that certainly divided opinion last campaign. Alluded to him earlier, Zinchenko. Been linked with Bayern Munich, a potential return with Vincent Kompany there. I mean, Zinchenko wouldn't be top of my list to sell, but what I would say is that I'm not sure how much more I want to see of him playing close to our goal. I would quite like to see him playing a bit more further up the pitch and potentially playing in one of the left eight, in the left eight role. Certainly don't want him taking up Martin Odegaard's position, but if he could play in that role that Xhaka was playing the season before last, I think that could be an option for him. Will we see it? I don't know. But he is one that, to be quite honest, if a decent enough offer came in, given his age as well, not that he's old, but he's one of the older players, and given his injury problems that he's had in the past as well, and given that he didn't play a huge amount of football towards the end of last season, if we were to get 35 million plus for him, I would certainly be very tempted to take that. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, well, Transfermarkt has, in the spirit of the fact that you can clearly tell I've had Transfermarkt open the whole time, Transfermarkt has him down as 38 million euros, which I think is about 35 million pounds. He was signed a couple of years ago for us. According to BBC, it was 30 million pounds, including 2 million add-on. So again, if you're talking about a guy who is 27 at the moment, he turns 28 in December. As you said, he's missed quite a few games. His injury history since he signed for us, but even before that, wasn't amazing. So this season, through injury, he's missed 8 games. Last season, it was 20 games. The season before that, for Man City, it was 12. The season before that was 15. The season before that, 24. So again, it's another guy. In fact, last season was his best season in terms of being available. The season just gone. And as you said, we sort of stopped using him towards the end. And I think Arteta obviously saw the defensive solidity of Tomiyasu as a more valuable asset at that time of the year. He's had lots of calf problems. It just feels to me like the sort of thing that it's a bit of a caveat. I don't think it would be a loan thing. I don't think anyone, Arsenal or Zinchenko, learned from a loan thing. So then the question is either keep or sell. A quick plug for the midweek, mid-season or end of season or off-season, summer season little mini show that I do on Wednesdays and Thursdays, one in, one out, one bangs. Last week we had Dave Seaver, our good old friend Albert, and Akil, who from AST, and they gave us their selections. Dave said that he would drive Zinchenko himself to Bayern Munich as his choice for somebody to go out. I'm not sure I'm that far inclined to suggest that I would want to do that. Personally, I still think he's a very good footballer. I think the way that we are in build-up and certainly games against lesser opposition when we have more of the ball, he's a worthwhile asset. But if Jurriën Timber can do the things that Arteta's talking about, then perhaps we become a little bit less reliant on him in those quote-unquote lesser games. So I'd be tempted for 35 million quid. I'd definitely be tempted. James, would you be tempted if Bayern came in and said 20 million quid?
No, not for 20. I think
he's 25.
No, I think you've got to be making a profit on someone like Zinchenko, or at least breaking even, because he's still got immense technical ability. That's the thing. But the issue I had with Zinchenko last season were those lapses in concentration in very stupid areas. Like, I'm sure he made those mistakes the season before last, but it was just that they seemed to be so poignant. They were so highlighted last campaign. That's why I want him to be playing a bit further up the pitch, and I'd like to see what he could do in that left 8 role. But I just don't feel that Arteta is going to play him there, to be quite honest with you. But he's still a very useful squad option to have. At times when he came off the bench last season, he was influential. But I think if the right offer came in, definitely north of 30 million, then I would be looking to cash in on him. It's quite sad because he was so good in that first season, but I think it's just a sign of how much the squad is evolving, that we're now in a position where we could say, okay, we still value you as part of this team, but if an offer comes in, then we're not going to stand in your way. And the exact same can be said for Gabriel Jesus, who we'll go on to talk about in a little bit. But before we move on to the further areas of the pitch in midfield and attack, there is one more player I want to put to you, Chris. Nuno Tavares, the forgotten man at Arsenal, went on loan to Marseille the season before last. Didn't have too bad of a time. Had some mixed performances from what I saw, but did score a lot of goals. Didn't seem to be the worst loan in the world. Certainly played a lot of football. This season, been a bit of a disaster for him. Barely played any football at Forest. Been very much in and out of the team. Has had injury problems. I mean, for me, it's an obvious sell. But the question is, how much money are you going to get for him? And I think we'd be lucky to get 5 million.
Yeah, I mean, again, transfer market, this is where it gets a bit funny. 15 million euros. You're not getting 15 million euros for Tavares in a million years.
No.
You know, even half that in euros, you'd probably say, because half of that, 7.5 million, probably 5. I think you're probably talking about, just cut your losses. Someone will take a punt on him, I think. Maybe not in England, but he's 24 years old. Yeah, he's all right. He's a decent player. He's a bit erratic. 24 years old. You can still take a punt on him, I think. And he's not massively injury prone, I don't think. So I think someone will, but you've got to drop. You've got to drop your price very low to keep someone like that. So yeah, sell for 5 million quid. You've got yourself a deal, James Cook.
Well, let's hope it can happen. I still think he's a good player. I know he had his moments of madness when he was in an Arsenal shirt, but I still remember when he came in towards the end of the 21-22 season, and he certainly wasn't the worst player in the world, but I just don't think he suits playing in a back four, especially the way we play. You need him to be playing pretty much as effectively a left winger in a back five, playing as that left wing back who just wants to bomb forward, because he's got pace, he's got power, he's got a decent enough cross on him sometimes. So if we could get, 5 million, I think that'd be good business. And again, like Tierney, hope he has a really good rest of his career. Let's move into midfield. Chris, Thomas Partey obviously missed such an enormous amount of this season. Seems to be out forever and ever and ever. Then he got back into training. Then he got injured again. Then he came back for the final few games of the season and was inconsistent, had some very good games, had some quite poor games, in all honesty. For me, I'm going to be a bit cutthroat with Thomas Partey. It's time to part ways, in my opinion. I'm not too sure how much money you're going to get for him. I don't think you're going to get north of 10 million, to be honest. And people might say that's really low. But again, he's another guy that's on big wages, huge injury problems throughout his entire Arsenal career, apart from the season before last, where he was available for most of the campaign. But given his age, given the injury problems, given that, we played so much of the season without him and we, pushed the title right until the very end, for me, like JJ says in the chat, the party's over.
Yeah, it's a shame, really, because when he was on form, at the beginning of the season, I think we all hoped that we'd see that midfield of Rice, Partey and Ødegaard for the whole of the season, with Partey sitting deep, maybe Rice as a left, or Rice and Partey switching, or whatever it was. It's just, for whatever reason, his injury record is just absolutely horrendous. What's mad is you look at Transfermarkt again. I feel like I'm a spokesperson for them tonight, but it's a good judge of you get a lot of good data on there. In 2015, 2016, he missed 6 games. And then for 4 years, he didn't miss a single match for Atletico Madrid. And then in the 1920 season, the season before he signed for us, he missed 1 football match. And then you look at his Arsenal career, and I won't reel out each of them, but the first season he signed for us, 21 games missed. The second season he signed for us, 19 games missed. The season where we just fell short, and just as him and Xhaka kind of established themselves, he missed 6 games, and then last season 26 games. You cannot have a player like that on your books earning that sort of money. Again, going to Transfermarkt, 18 million euros, absolutely no chance given the wages. Like you said, if a Saudi Arabian, if someone like an Italian club comes in and says 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 million, whatever, just take it, get the wages off the books and look to reinvest. Because that's another way to look at it. You buy a young player in their early 20s, they're not going to want $250,000 a week. If you're talking about paying them 100 grand a week, that's £150,000 a week off of the books. You take, let me just get my maths is rubbish. So if you're talking about 150k times that by 52 weeks, that's £7.8 million saving just on wages. If you're paying someone 100 grand a week, as opposed to £250,000 a week. He looks shaky towards the end. I think James makes a really, really good point here. He doesn't seem to have the legs anymore. So, yeah, see if we can make any money for him, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and I love the player.
Yeah, I think we all love the player when he's fit, when he's available, when he's consistent, when he's doing what he does best. Problem is, he just hasn't done that enough. When he came back from injury, it took him a bit of a while to get up to speed. Even when he had been in the team for a while, he just wasn't at the level that we'd seen the season before. He wasn't bad, definitely wasn't bad, but it was just too inconsistent. And like JJ says, he hasn't got the legs. His age is only going in one trajectory at the moment, sadly. And it's time to part ways for me. And given that we've got Jorginho signed up to a new deal, if we can get another midfielder in this summer, and given the fact that, like I say, we played so much of last season without Thomas Partey, I think he's another one that we've surpassed, and I think we can get him off the books. And this now leads me on to what felt at the time like the Partey prodigy, Sambi Lokonga. I think again he's another one in the Tavares bracket that he's going to leave this summer. Was good when he played for Luton. I think a lot of Luton fans liked what they saw from him. But again, another one that seemed to have injury problems this campaign. And he went on loan the season before last as well to Crystal Palace for the second half of the campaign. Didn't play a lot under Roy Hodgson. He was more of a Patrick Vieira signing. Then obviously he left. Hodgson came in, didn't get a look in. And then he's had a very in and out time with Luton. So what do you get for Lokonga, Chris?
Do you want to play some Transfermarkt bingo? Have a go. What do you think Transfermarkt thinks that his value is in euros?
In euros, I'm going to say 16 million.
Close, 15 million.
Okay.
Would you get 15 million for him? I mean, we signed him for 17 million quid. We ain't getting 17 million quid, even though he did all right for Luton. I think if you take 15, you'd bite someone's hand off for that, wouldn't you? It's a project that hasn't really worked. I actually liked him. I remember talking to a few people outside the Tollington before when we played Villa, not last season, the season before last. So we beat Villa at home. And Lokonga started, I think, because I think that might have been a game where Partey was injured or suspended. And I actually thought Sambi did all right. He's the sort of guy that needs a run of games, but he's the sort of player that you class him as a We need like floor raisers. We need sort of people that raise the minimum quality of our squad. And I'm not sure that he's that sort of player that if he comes in for a Rice or a Partey or whoever it is, it's just not enough of a. We've jumped so much in terms of our quality that I just can't see it working. Let's get some money for him. I don't think a loan works out. He's had a loan to Palace. He's had a loan to Luton. Too many of these loan deals that just seem to go on and on and on. And he's got 2 years left in his contract. Let's get the money now.
Yep, couldn't have put it better myself. And I see a lot of people in the chat saying 10 million euros. Yeah, that sounds about right for me. If we could get, I think, between 8 and 10, yeah, that'd be perfect. Okay, now things are going to start getting interesting, Chris. Emile Smith-Rowe. This is one that I think a lot of people have on their lips as someone to leave the club this summer. But I'm also going to throw in another name alongside Smith-Rowe, Fabio Vieira. Now, I think we can only afford to lose one of these guys. And for me, I'd be leaning towards Fabio. As much as it pains me to say, because I just don't think he's played enough football at Arsenal. But the one thing that really sticks out to me about Fabio Vieira is that he's still stick thin, which is the problem that he had when he first came into the club. And he just doesn't have the physicality required in the Premier League. And I mean, out of all the signings we've made in the past couple of seasons, he's the only one that's been a bit of a dud. I mean, he's had some good games. He's had some smatterings of quality. I remember when he came in for Odegaard at Brentford away, it was fantastic. When he came on against Fulham last season, changed the game. He was that good. But again, big injury last season. He was available since February and he never played. So that tells me that Arteta just doesn't rate him. So for me, Chris, I'm going to keep it simple. I'd keep Smith-Rowe. I'd sell Vieira.
Yeah. It's a tough one because Smith-Rowe is one of our boys. He's got a really brilliant song as well with Saka. And we've seen what he can do and we've seen the value he adds. But with Fabio Vieira, it's just a weird unknown. Like that game, like you said, that game at home to Fulham, that Brentford game, he was good. And then this season, when he came on against Fulham, the game at the Emirates, and you just saw the way he could turn the game. We just haven't seen enough of it. He's had 2 injuries this season. He's missed 133 days. He's missed 20 games. And then he came back into a team which was fighting for the title. And Arteta's just saying, like, I'm going to keep it the same every week. As soon as we got knocked out of the Champions League as well, it was same 11 every week, lads. And they never let him down. And I think what was telling was that Arteta was using Smith-Rowe more than Fabio Vieira towards the end of the season. But I don't think that's because he rates Smith-Rowe more than Fabio Vieira. I think he was trying to get into the shop window. So my personal preference, if you put a gun to my head, would be keep Smith-Rowe, sell Vieira, because we just haven't had enough data. But my gut feel says that it'll be the other way around based on Arteta's preferences.
Do you think we could potentially sell both? So I think Smith-Rowe is a sellable asset that we could get £25 million plus for, which would be pure profit, really good money for us. And you could potentially look at maybe 15 to 20 million for Fabio Vieira, which is a big loss and it's not ideal. But again, he's a player that just doesn't seem to be working out for us. If we were to sell them both, I know this is a bit bold, but do you think we could look to bring in the next player I wanted to talk about, Ethan Nwaneri, who seems to be edging ever closer to the Arsenal first team?
I don't think you can't. I don't think Arteta will give the same number of. It won't take Smith-Rowe's minutes and Fabio Vieira's minutes, smush them together and give them to Nwaneri. I just don't think you can put that much pressure on a young lad who's like, 17, 18. I don't see a scenario where we sell both. Interestingly, Emile Smith-Rowe on transfer marked bingo. He's only done 22 million euros. He's at his lowest value he's been since he was about sort of 16, 17 years old. His peak was in 2022 when he was worth 40 million euros. If someone comes in and says 20 million pound, would you take Smith-Rowe?
Oh,
As in sell him?
I'd want to push for 25. My worry with Smith Rowe is he would go somewhere, play regularly, and you'd start to see,
Smash it.
yeah, why he's such a good player. So for me, no, it's got to be a minimum 25. But that's why I'm inclined to keep him, because I still think, okay, like JJ says in the chat room, he's only played 7% of Arsenal's minutes in 2 seasons. That's bonkers. But he has had those injuries. He's been in and out. He's come into a team after those injuries that is fighting for the title. If we could just give him a really good pre-season, get him in the team a bit more regularly, be a more solid and reliable option off the bench, I think he's got more to offer this Arsenal team than Fabio Vieira. But like that comment says as well, 25 million for Smith Rowe, loan out Vieira, that could be an option. I'm not sure if a loan for Vieira is necessarily going to do us or him much good. I mean, what will he have on his contract after that? A year left, maybe 2.
So,
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but that's definitely going to be one to keep an eye on this summer. Just another quick one, Chris, that not a lot of people are talking about at the moment. Charlie Patino was a guy that had so much hype around him at Arsenal over the past couple of years. He played in that game against Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup. He scored in the Carabao Cup as well. He's had a bit of a mixed season at Swansea. He had some great games, but again, another one that's been in and out of the team. He seemed to be leaving the club last summer. That didn't happen. He's gone on loan. I think the expectation is that he's obviously going to leave this window. But do you think there's any slight glimmer of hope that Charlie Patino could either go on loan again or still have a future at Arsenal?
I suspect it might be that's an interesting one, that one, because he signed a new deal. Was it like last year? Because he was about to leave on a free and we signed him to an extended contract and then he went on loan to Swansea. So I do wonder whether or not maybe Arteta has a look at him over the summer. I think that might happen. He might have a look at him over the summer. I don't know how much value a loan deal has for Charlie Patino, because he's done it a couple of times. How old is he? Was he 18, 19? He's 20 years old.
He's in his 20s.
He's 20 years old. He's going to be 21 in October. He's probably at the age where he needs some sort of stability or he needs some closure. So it's either, are you giving me a chance or send me on somewhere else? Again, just for consistency of today's podcast, he's down as 9 million euros, so about 7 million quid. Someone will probably take a punt on that, I would have thought.
Yeah. Do you think a Premier League club, or do you still think he's Championship level?
I think it'll be Championship team will probably take a punt on him, would be my gut feel.
Okay. And one to keep an eye on. And just to go back on myself quickly, on Ethan Nwaneri, I think there is a slight expectation that he's going to be in and around the first team next season. But do you think he's someone that could benefit from a loan, even at 17 years old? Do you think it would be good for him to get first team football?
I do. I suspect what will happen is the club will keep him around for the first half of the season. So when there's League Cup games and maybe the odd game, the odd League Cup game, or if we're smashing a team at home 3-4-0, and you can give him 10 minutes. I suspect that might happen. And then in January, maybe after an FA Cup game or something, he goes out on loan for the second half of the season to give him minutes. I kind of feel like it might be a bit like that.
Okay, good point. And just before we move on to our final name on my list, Chris, I'm going to throw 3 names at you. For me, all 3 of them are players that we should sell, but I want you to tell me how much money you think we should get for each of them. And there is a slight curveball player in there that you may have forgotten about. But the first 2, Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, and the last one, Marquinhos.
Okay. Marquinhos, I think you're barely getting anything for. So let's chuck in 3 million quid for that, because I don't think he's just not played very much. He had that one game in the Europa League, didn't he?
He
scored, and he looked quite a hench, sort of beefy lad that stocky player that could be quite good, but never really kicked on. So if you get 3 million quid for that, then you'd probably be happy. Reece Nelson, again, he's barely played any minutes really this season, has he? So if you get, he's on big contract as well. So if you get 5 million for Reece Nelson, I think I'd probably say take that and move on. Eddie Nketiah, now he has bagged goals. He has played football. So what have we got for
Did Eddie you see, Nketiah? Chris, just before we talk about Eddie, I don't know if you've seen the links with Broja going to Everton for £30 million. Now, he supposedly for £30 million. Now, he's obviously on significantly less wages than Eddie Nketiah, which help inflate that transfer fee for Chelsea. Eddie's on around 100 grand a week, isn't he? So I don't think we're going to be looking at it'd be nice to get 30 million, but I think you've got to take into account that he has got big wages. So for me, a good amount of money for Eddie would be 25.
Yeah, I mean this is what always just staggers me. Why isn't a club like Everton looking at Eddie Nketiah? If we look at the amount of minutes, Broja played, he made 27 appearances in all competitions last season, but he played 776 minutes in total. So basically, he's a bit part player that's coming on as a sub here, there, and everywhere. If you look at Eddie Nketiah last season has played, where are you, Eddie? So he's played 1,000 minutes. So he's played about 300 minutes more. He's made the same number of appearances, 27, but he's got 10 goals. So Broja has got 2 goals in 27 appearances and 500 minutes. And Eddie Nketiah has played he's played 37 times and he's got 6 goals. That doesn't make sense. He's got more than 6 goals, hasn't he? That can't be right. Let me just double check. 2 seconds. No, he has got 6 goals in all competitions. So Broja's got 2 goals.
Sheffield United.
Yeah, Broja's got 2 goals. Nketiah's got 6. Broja's played 27 times. Nketiah's played 37 times. Nketiah's got 1,000 minutes. Broja's got 500 minutes. And if he's going for 30 million quid, I want at least that for Eddie.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, for me, out of all the players that we've spoken about today, he is the one that I think can justify one of the higher transfer fees. He's scored goals in the past. I just think with Arsenal, it's just not the right style of football. He wants to be playing off the shoulder, counter-attacking team, being that fox in the box type of player, right place, right time, fast counter-attack, transition player. I think he'd do wonders at a club like Everton, Crystal Palace. So many clubs in the bottom half of the Premier League table. I think he would do an absolutely stellar job for. But that leads us on to another striker, Chris, and our final name in my list, Gabriel Jesus. I wouldn't have dreamed of even putting him in this list the season just gone. But again, injury problems have been there. Inconsistent performances has certainly been there, which I think we can attribute to the injury as well. We understand that he's not going to have surgery. So hopefully he has a really good summer off, relaxes. He's not going to the Copa America, comes back, has a great preseason with Arsenal. And he can be that guy that we can utilize across the entire front line. Because if we, do go for, say, a Sesko or, whoever it may be in that striking role, I don't think you are usurping Havertz anytime soon. If we bring in a Sesko, then you've got your other striking option. Gabriel Jesus, for me, is going to be the guy that fills in for Saka or Trossard or Martinelli on the flanks and could be the sort of guy that plays across the entire front line and has that, nice fluid movement with whoever's playing in the striking role. So I don't want to say we're taking away the number 9 role from Jesus, because I still like to think whether he's lining up on the left or the right, he will still get in those central positions. But I just don't think you can rely on him as Arsenal's out and out number 9 at the minute.
No, you absolutely can't. So this season, 85 days missed, 16 games for injury. Last season, 99 days missed, 17 games for injury. The season before that, he was injury-free, but the season before that, he missed 14 games. He's just, and do you know what? It's all been knee stuff. For us, he's had 4 knee injuries and 1 hamstring injury since he joined us in 2 seasons. Transfermarkt has him down as 65 million euros. I mean, if that came in, there might be a question to be had. If someone came in and said,
that is not happening, Chris.
Yeah, not with his injury record. He's 27. He's just recently turned 27. I don't want to, because of his versatility, I don't want to lose him. I would keep him at least for another season. And then he's got 2 years left at the end of that. And then you've got to make a choice. If he's still injury prone, then you look to move on. But his versatility, as you said, I think is the thing that sort of saves him a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's not ideal for him because he came to Arsenal to be the number 9, but also you've got to be realistic about the situation, with the injuries, with the way the club has moved on, with the options we've got, with the emergence of Kai Havertz as the central striker now, with another central striker potentially coming in. He can still be a massive part of this squad. It's probably just not going to be as our number 9, unfortunately, or at least not from the start. But great personality, great player to have within the team, great work ethic, and versatility is so key for us. So for me, keep. But if he has another injury play campaign, then yeah, it's time to move him on. But like JJ says in the chat, 265 grand a week. That's going to be an interesting conversation to have next summer if he is indeed one that we're looking to move on. But
it's a lot of money for 36 games and 8 goals and 8 assists. We need more from him, don't we? We need more from somebody on that sort of money.
We do, yeah. I mean, in the Champions League, I thought he was exceptional for the most part, but in the league, just wasn't at the level he was the season before. Just in front of goal, just nowhere near clinical enough. The amount of goal scoring chances he got into just didn't take this season. It's crazy. But again, given the benefit of doubt, we'll put it down to that injury. Let's hope he's a lot more clinical next season and can play a big role in what is hopefully another title charge. But just before we go, Chris, I can see we've got 2 questions in the chat box. First of all, from Karen Russell. What Premier League... Hang on. For everyone from any Premier League club, who would you take? Am I reading that right? For everyone?
Yeah, I don't think we've got time to go through every single player.
Should we rephrase that, sorry, Cal, just slightly to what Premier League player would we take from any club?
Yeah, I think we'll do that. I mean, if you're going to just play cheats, you'd probably just take the low-hanging fruit and say Erling Haaland through the middle. It's just going to be a monster. It's just going to bag your goals, right?
Well, I'm going to say Rodri, and I would play him at the base. Declan Rice is the number 8. Rodri, Rice, Odegaard. Who's stopping that? What a midfield that would be.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Pretty tasty, eh?
I mean, Erling Haaland's still got 27 goals, though. So, he's going to bag an extra. If he was in that Arsenal team, you'd expect to get north of 20, 25 goals. But then again, what are you going to do with Kai Havertz? So
no, we don't need Haaland, mate. We've got Kai Havertz. And if he continues scoring and assisting at the rate he was last season, when he played as the number 9, he's outscoring Haaland. Bookmark it. Take my word for it. It's happening. And last question, just before we go, Federico Chiesa. Any thoughts on him coming to us? I would love Chiesa, but he's another one that's had his injury problems. So for me, unfortunately, it's going to be a no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just calling up. Again, 35 million euros on Transfermarkt at the moment. If you look at his injury history, I know he did have that post the last set of World Cup, wasn't it? I mean, he missed 50 in 21-22. He missed 57 games, which is crazy. That's basically the whole season. Last season, he missed 16 games, 75 days injured, and this season just gone, he's missed 11 games. He was 45 games out injured. We don't need another player that's injury prone. We've already had problems with Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, Gabriel Jesus. We don't need to bring someone in for £30 million and then see him, and Fabio Vieira as well, and see them missing for half the season. So yeah, for me, no thanks. Good player, but not for me.
Yeah, certainly a good player. I remember in the Euros 2021, he was the real standout for me. I thought he was absolutely sensational. Got that move to Juventus, and it's just such a shame with what's happened with his injuries. But like you say, we can't have injured players. And whilst we've got Martinelli, Trossard, Jesus that can play on the flanks, Saka, potentially another winger coming in. Yeah, for me, it's a defiant no, unfortunately. But Chris, I'm going to leave it there, mate. Thank you ever so much for coming on and talking through the keep, sell, and loan players of Arsenal 24-25 season. Certainly been an interesting chat, and I believe you are back on Thursday with a very special guest, aren't you?
Yes, I am back. I've got Mr. Harry Symeou, and I wanted to get Craig on, formerly of this parish, but unfortunately he can't make it because he's doing coaching stuff. But I will get Craig on at some stage over the summer. I've been talking to him about it. And I've got the fabulous Mike McDonald coming on. So it's me, Harry, and Mike going to be talking 1 in, 1 out, 1 bangs. Join us. I think it's 7:30, but we'll put this show up on YouTube so that you can subscribe and do the notifications thing that Amanda always bangs on about tomorrow.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously, if you want to keep in touch, why wouldn't you with the Same Old Arsenal podcast? Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. If you want to watch 1 in, 1 out, 1 bangs on Thursday, what are you going to do? You're going to subscribe. You're going to hit the notification bell. You're going to see Chris's wonderful face with Harry Simu. It's going to be a fantastic podcast. Make sure you're there, guys. And thank you to each and every one of you that's tuned in tonight. Over 500 of you in the chat room. So absolutely amazing numbers. And hopefully we will have plenty more content coming to you throughout the summer, starting from Thursday with Chris and hopefully filtering throughout the Euros up until August when we get to do this all over again. But from myself, from Chris, thank you very, very much for tuning in. And as Amanda always says, always Arsenal. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.